Okay, hello everyone and welcome. We are so glad that you can join us as a part of our wonderful Hispanic Heritage Month celebration. This panel is very important because it's exactly what we are doing to this topic in this month is what does it mean to be a Hispanic student institution. Let me start, admit everyone. Okay, there we So today we are going to have a panel to discuss the topic in CSUSB designation as a Hispanic Serving Institution. And we are going to hear from the perspective of a faculty, staff, administrator, and of course, our wonderful students. So today we have a very rich panel. Our first panelist, or one of the panelists, is our student representative for ALFSS, Amy Garcia. She is a first-generation college student, a proud Chicana, and the daughter of two hardworking immigrants' parents. She's doing her third year of kinesiology, allied health student, and she also works at undergraduate studies as well. Welcome, Amy. Our next wonderful panelist is Dr. Avicenna A.B. or AKI A.B. Rodriguez. She started working in higher education at her alma mater and in CSU San Marcos in 2008. And she has a degree in sociology from CSU San Marcos and a master in post-secondary education with an emphasis in studying affairs from the San Diego State University. So you can see she belongs to our state system. She completed her doctoral degree from San Bernardino. So she's an alumni for our wonderful university. Her doctoral is in educational leadership. AB has worked at CSU in Park Desert campus since 2010. She has worked in admissions, advising, and now she's the current student engagement coordinator. AB was born in Guadalajara, Mexico, and her family immigrated to the Coachella Valley in 1990. Welcome, AB. Abby, sorry. Dr. Pablo Gomez was born in Mexico, and he obtained his PhD from the Northwestern University in 2002. Dr. Gomez is an associate professor of psychology in the Palm Desert campus. So we have a wonderful representation today from the PDC campus. So thank you everyone for coming. He teaches cognitive psychology and statistics methods courses. While his research interests lie on perceptual decision-making and visual word recognition, he's also interested in expanding the use of reproducible research practices in psychology. He has published more than 50 research articles, and he has obtained grants from the National Science Foundation and Spain's Ministry of Science and Innovation. Our wonderful last panelist, but not least, is Eduardo Mendoza. He is the Director of Advising and Academic Service. He also has been working in a university for 16 years, and he has been the Director of Advising Academic Service and the Graduate Studies for 6 years. He holds a Master in Public Administration, exactly from Cal State San Bernardino as well, that he completed in 2007. So these are the wonderful panelists today, and welcome everyone. We have a Dr. Murillo, who is going to be, and also Aurora Vilche, that are going to be our moderators. Welcome everyone. Please raise your hand or write any questions or comment on the chat. Thank you so much.
Okay, very good. Do I take over now? Is Aurora on here? I can't see. And now I'll just jump into it, and then she'll join us, I suppose. Okay, so welcome everybody. Aurora and Dr. Diaz asked me to moderate this, so I'll do the best I can to whatever. I've been working with HSIs for a lot of years. And of course, our campus has been in HSI since I think 1994. So we're going up on 30 years, I guess, in a few years. We need to plan something in a few years to celebrate our 30-year thing. For those of you who may not exactly know for sure, Hispanic Serving Institutions, HSIs, is a federal designation. And what it means is that at least 25% of our undergraduates, so they don't count the graduates, so it's our undergraduates, at least 25% are Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, Chicano, the whole umbrella. And so we, here on our campus, we achieved that since 1994. So we were already, the trajectory was already happening in the 90s. I came here in 99. So we were already in HSI then. And so this federal designation is supposed to, there's a whole slew of minority serving institutions. The ones most people are familiar with are the HBCUs, the historically Black colleges and universities, because it's part of the public imagination, right? TV shows, people know about all the kind of the famous kind of Black colleges back east. But less is known about the Asian, the API. Less is known about the tribal colleges, like in the Dakotas, and of course less is known about HSIs, Hispanic Serving Institutions. So part of the effort of this is Hispanic Heritage Month, and this is HSI Week. President Biden, we've been doing this for a lot of years, but every year the president renews the proclamation. So this is officially HSI Week. And so our campus, the big thing here is we just became an HSI over the years because of the demographics. And so we're just enrolling at least 25%. But over the years, our university has had to make it an effort of intentionality in order to actually move away from just enrolling students to actually actively serving students. So this panel today, our panelists today, you all are influential people, very important people on our campus. And so we're gonna ask you some questions, and then hopefully that's gonna spark a dialogue. And some of these questions here that Aurora and I are gonna pitch to you, any and all of you are free to jump in. So it's not like one question per person. So we want more of a true panel to people talk about it. Before I jump into that, if you guys can just give me about another minute, I should be able to share my screen. Oh, that's all right. I did the wrong thing. No big deal. I don't need to share my screen. That's okay. That over the years, our campus here at Cal State San Bernardino, we've moved beyond what they call the traditional student profile into what's now many people call a post-traditional student profile. So in other words, back a long time ago, when students would come to our campus, 80s and 90s, they were considered, quote, college ready. But since the 90s, 2000s until now, we've had to deal with some students need what they call remediation or some kind of academic, something a little bit more, right? Maybe take a college course, do something during the summer. And many of our students back before would enroll full time. But now we have students who only come part-time, or they start off at the community college before they come to us. Sometimes back in the day, straight from high school, boom, you go into the 4-year. And now this post-traditional student the students often delay. Maybe they take a year or two off before they reach us. Students would oftentimes live off campus. A lot of students now, especially during COVID, they're living with their parents. Before, the push was, hey, let's get students to finish in 4 years. Now, honestly, the way we look at the numbers, we look at it as, can you complete within 6 years, right? A traditional student, their parents may have gone and got a college degree. Many of our students here, they're the first in their family to enroll in college, right? You didn't have to work so much before. Now our students got to work, right? Before you would maybe pick where you want to go. Now, a lot of our students make the decision to come to Cal State San Bernardino based on the cost of attendance, right? So the profile of our student, as we've become more Hispanic Serving Institution, we're serving a different type of student. And so, and I just want to preface by saying that. So the first question we would like to pitch, and I don't know if Aurora's back with us. If not, the first one, and this is open to anybody, we recognize that student success isn't just about academic success. You know what would be easier? What if I put it in the chat? That way everybody could see here. Okay, let me okay, so there's the chat. So we recognize that student success isn't just about academic success. So how can CSUSB create, there's a typo though, create welcoming spaces where students can celebrate their culture and find community? And this is open up to anybody in the panel.
I can start off. I want to talk a little bit about how we have more spaces for students, right? We have a Latinx Center, and I will have to apologize because most of you are from San Bernardino campus. I see that. So if anything that I say is not accurate, because I'm over here at Palm Desert where we even have limited resources compared to what's happening out there. So if I say a center name wrong, please let me know. But I think having those types of centers, like the cross-cultural center, and that's being open to students, we've started to create a more welcoming place for students to feel and build community. I know that Dr. Diaz has a teatro group, a theater group that she has with her students, a different way to connect with our students in the community. So we have that available to students to have access to connect with other people on the university campus. And it's important to create, and one more thing, part of orientation, we have family orientation, and we have it in Spanish. I think San Bernardino does it too, but at PDC we have a Spanish component where we're able to engage our families coming in. Because as we know, our Hispanic students are very familial, right? So we have that connection with our families. So it's great that we include them, and doing more of that, doing more of including our families and things within coming in and starting that connection with the university. I don't know. Recently, I know that we've stepped back in printing out recruitment material. And in the past, I feel like I've seen something, again, I don't know if it was PDC or San Bernardino or both, recruitment material information in Spanish. I know for sure we had one at PDC because I know that Brenda was on the call, was on there to translate for it. But having recruitment material, we go out and show students and their families like, hey, we have some stuff here for you to understand, because going to college is a familial decision that we make for students.
If I could just add to what Avi said, so the centers are huge. I mean, San Bernardino campus in our student union, there's so many different centers now, which is different than when I was a student here in the mid-90s. But now with all these centers to support, but then even from the advising world, 10 years ago, there was probably one advising office. And just to give more access to students to go meet with someone that's not a professor, that could be intimidating for a lot of our students, but someone that they can go to and build a relationship with, to know that they can get questions answered, or just a safe space for them. I mean, this, you all have heard of this. We got to meet the students where they're at, right? We got to meet them. There's different students. There's first generation students. There's students who parents have their college degree, and we just have to meet them where they're at. And I think advising has helped in a lot of that in terms of guiding, directing students. So, but not only the centers, I mean, we can do programmatical things too, right? So we have first generation events that are now starting to happen. Not that all Hispanics are in that category, but first generational events, and we can probably do more specific events like that too in their first year experience event. So there's now focus on equity gaps for graduation and retention and so forth. So there's more that we can do, but those are some of the things that at least I've seen change over the last few years.
Okay.
I can see that Dr. Gomez has raised his hand. Dr. Gomez.
Yeah, I think I mean it's hard for me to answer this question in the tense that it was posed, because I've been at CSUSB only since January of 2020. So most of my experience has been with Black squares in Zoom. But I think I can answer this as how faculty can help, and particularly faculty of color in some ways. So I am new to California, right? And one thing that I have observed is that there's a bit of a cultural divide in some ways that to me was a little surprising. I would have thought that everything would be more integrated, and that most non-Hispanic people would have, you know, working knowledge of Spanish, because after all, 25% of under 20-year-old people in California speak Spanish at home or whatever, right? So what I have noticed is that there is kind of like a mainstream cultured world represented by the university that is pretty divorced from home life. And, you know, you hear the wonderful Southern California accents, right, in the hallways, and the Spanglish, and sometimes even the Spanish purely, right, on the hallways. But then that's immediately shut down when an interaction with the authorities comes into play. And I get it, right? It's not unreasonable. But what I have tried to do, not only in the teaching, but also in the research, is to bridge that gap and let students know that, you know, those two cultures are not in opposition, right? And that, you know, I don't teach any, like, I don't teach Spanish, I don't teach any, like, you know, kind of like identity-based stuff. I teach mathematical modeling and statistics and cognitive neuroscience, right? But like, I make the point to show that, I don't know, that Ramon y Cajal discovered the function of neurons, right? And that the students are part of a culture that's a universal culture and not a provincial culture. And I also feel that for the large group of students that is not Hispanic, Latin, or whatever we want to call them, right? That's also very important, right? Because that culture that you know, can be broadly described as Latin, Latinx, Hispanic, or whatever, has a lot to offer in terms of views of the world, in terms of history and science, in terms of arts and whatever, to the non-Hispanic students. So I don't know, I went for too long, but I think that's my answer to every question.
Here's a question for Avi, for Doctora Rodriguez. Since you're familiar as a student engagement coordinator, you're familiar with the kinds of events and programs we do here. So, you know, what do you feel? What do you think CSUSB does well in terms of you know, events or programs that to our, you know, Latinx, Latino, Latina, Chicana communities? You know, like, what's in place that you think really has a positive effect on our community?
I think that, and again, I'm desert, you know, different vibe than San Bernardino, but I really appreciate that we're doing this Hispanic Heritage Month, right? It's been 5 years, I think that we were doing, I heard yesterday in the welcome, it's been 5 years, but also if we're in HSI all year round and getting that federal check every year, we should have Hispanic events all year round, right? It's not just a one-time, we're embracing this culture once. And it has to be an all year round acknowledgement, has to be an all year round programming. I know that you are in charge of LEAD, and LEAD has been here for how many years now, Dr. Murillo?
Yeah, like 25, almost 25.
And it's a community event, and people feel like it's a great. Can you talk about it for those people that don't know about it? Sorry to put you back on the spot, but can you talk about LEAD for those people that don't know?
Well, when I came here in '99, there was a huge Latino educational crisis. Very few Latinos. This is going to sound ugly, all right? So my apologies, but CSUSB was like it's going to sound ugly, like a roach motel. You can get in, but you can't get out. And it was, sorry to put it in those terms. So a lot of our raza were coming in, and there was a big push, and the push was admissions. Let's recruit and bring these Latinos, Chicanos to campus. But there was nothing to help them. Once you're here, there was nothing, right? Thank God for programs like EOP, right? Those innovative programs like EOP, all those things over the years became for us the means. Like, for example, when I went to school in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, there was only a handful of Chicanos, and it was a very lonely experience. And we had a struggle to finish college because you're by yourself. But and oftentimes, because we're in isolation, we don't feel welcomed. There's nothing for us really. And so once I had gotten here to campus, a lot of the same things from when I went to school it's the same thing. So LEAD, we didn't call it LEAD at first, but LEAD eventually became LEAD, was something to address the crisis. But it's not just Cal State San Bernardino, it became a national thing, that there's a crisis across the board. Yeah. So we do a lot of stuff. I don't need to, do it, but thank you for giving a plug to LEAD. But that leads me to think, maybe Dr. Rodriguez or anybody else, what can we do better to help our students feel welcomed? Or is that a thing of the past? Do our students, do they not feel isolated anymore? I don't know, because numerically by numbers we're the majority, but that doesn't necessarily mean, because anybody who studies history knows that numbers by themselves don't mean anything. We could be the majority of something, but we don't necessarily have, you can still feel like you're isolated on campus. So anyway, so anybody jump in on, do our students feel isolated, or are they just, I mean, I don't know. What is the experience of our students, and do we need to improve the way we welcome them?
Not to go back, but I know Amy, go for it, Amy. I know you've had your hand up for some time.
Thank you. Yes, as in a perspective as a student, I believe a way we can help improve and welcome these students is by tabling more, letting them know that there is something on campus for everyone, letting them know that someone's there for them, getting in contact with them, putting a name to a face. I know my freshman year, that's something that made me feel really welcomed and really engaged within CSUSB.
The only thing I'll add is when events are planned, we got to be careful that we don't put all Hispanics in one bucket, right? There's different groups. There's low income, but not all Hispanics are low income, right? There is first generation, but not all Hispanics are first generation. So we got to make sure we're not putting them all in the same bucket, and we understand there could be some veterans in there, there could be some honor students, there could be some athletes, there could be, and we are specific to who we're trying to target, because everyone's is different in that sense. So not everyone receives financial aid. We got to make sure that when we're doing these events that we're thinking about that as well.
Yeah, and I'll add just to what Valentina said, like mentoring, right? So I did a little research to prepare for this, but there's some schools, like I think Cal Poly Pomona, or maybe it was East Bay. They're doing programming where we have faculty mentoring students in all aspects, as Ed mentioned. We can't have the same experience is not the same for all Hispanic students, right? The experience that Ed has, the experience that I had, the experience that so-and-so had, they're all different. So we just can't put a sticker on it and make it one size fits all, because that's not going to work. We have to make sure that, as Amy said, she talked about tabling. How often are we as faculty and staff and as administrators asking students what they want? Hey, what do you think you need? Because we think we know the research, we've been doing it for years, so we know what they need, but each class that comes in is different. You know, in my time from advising, from admissions and advising, every class was different. I can see like this class needs more of this class needs more of that. So we have to tailor our services to them. So why not ask, hey, students, what do you need from us in regards to XYZ? So we can get them to connect with us, but we need to tailor these programs. I'm a big fan of mentoring. My dissertation was on mentoring. And I think that we have to do it, not just, again, putting a label on it and calling it mentoring. We have to train our mentors. Faculty are great in the classroom. They're great at research. They're great at teaching lessons. But how do faculty have that contact with students? You know, they see them every day. They see them more than I see them. They see them more than Ed sees them. And they're in the classroom every day. So how do we teach these faculty to mentor students and have a conversation?
So to piggyback on what Avi just said, and to what you mentioned a little earlier, Dr. Murillo, if we were doing a good job of bringing them in, but not getting them out, now that we're doing a better job of getting them out, are we just saying, good luck, see you later? Are we preparing them? Are we giving them those skills that we know can benefit them in their career path too, right? So that's probably the next step if we are not there yet.
Very good. Okay, so the next step, the next question I think maybe would be for our faculty representative, because someone here had mentioned that they liked what Professor Gomez said about educating us on the accomplishments of Latino, Latina, Latinx. So I put it in the chat room. So quite, just to be blunt, oftentimes having HSI status is a money grab. For a lot of institutions, they see it as, okay, I can get extra money, but oftentimes that money is used to fill the gaps in some other budget, you know, and all you need is 25% enrollment to be HSI. It doesn't mean that you are by law forced to do anything, right? I mean, you have to, it allows you to apply for grants, right? So once you have HSI status, you can apply for grants. So our university, like other places, have applied for grants, and these grants come and they do things with them on our campus. But they come and go. Oftentimes the programs are not institutionalized, but in theory, you get the grant money and you're supposed to institutionalize it so it becomes part of your institutional practice. But many times the money comes and goes. And many times HSI is just a conversation that takes place among the student services side. But we really don't talk about it much. Dr. Gomez, Professor Gomez, we really don't talk about it much on the academic side, you know? So what does it mean for you as a professor teaching in the classroom? Maybe give us some more examples of how you integrate, you know, Hispanic, Latino issues into your classes. And how do you, you know, do you see yourself as part of the Hispanic serving identity of this campus? Maybe you don't. We don't know.
You know, given that I just arrived, right? Like I think I'm still developing the identity. But one thing that I will say is that when I applied for the job, knowing that it was a Hispanic Serving Institution was one of the most attractive features. What I would like it to be in some ways, right, is a little bit like what Howard University does. Howard University, you know, they prepare engineers and they prepare doctors and they prepare chemists and they prepare biologists, right? And there's no like African-American chemistry per se, right? But when you're there, you get this like really cool energy of an African-American intellectual life. And, you know, I think you get a little bit of that in the main campus. In the Palm Desert campus, we're a little isolated and we might be a bit small, but kind of like aiming towards that direction, you know? So I personally, right, like what I like to do is kind of show a little bit by example, right, that that we can be the most competent statisticians and the most competent scientists and the most competent people, right? That, so I don't know, like I've told people before that to me, one of the most revolutionary acts that our community can take is to be awesome at whatever we do. Because we're always or often underestimated. So yeah, I mean, that's my approach, right? But I think in a large university, there's room for a lot of different approaches, and certainly I don't mean to prescribe it to anybody else but myself.
Thank you, Dr. Gomez. I am going to move us on to our next question, and I love this conversation so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And we're going to talk a little bit more about our HSI designation. And Dr. Murillo, thank you for posting it. And this question is, how, as an HSI, does our designation ensure that our campus is accessible to all and that support is available to students to achieve their dreams? And so this one, we had a couple of our panelists talk about being able to speak to this question. I'm going to turn it over to Amy for our student perspective if you want to lead us off.
Okay, so I believe that we can ensure that the campus is accessible to all and support all students to achieve their dreams by reassuring that they are what makes CSUSB CSUSB. Each and every one of the students has something to contribute to CSUSB, and I feel like embracing that and letting students know that they are important to campus and just basically have something to contribute is can help students achieve their own dreams, giving them reassurance, like how Dr. Pablo Gomez, he mentioned that we usually kind of don't really have enough, well, speaking for personal experiences as a Chicana, I kind of doubt myself at times just because of being Chicana, maybe not being competent enough, maybe giving them reassurance that they have more than what it takes and being unique and basically having what it takes to achieve their dreams.
Thank you, Amy. Is there anyone else on our panel who would like to address this question?
It ties in.
Go ahead, Ed.
Go ahead, Avi.
I'm a big fan of representation, as Amy talked about, being reassured. And I think it's like a imposter syndrome, which our identities are always like, you know, they're not, it's not always just this, it's everything, right? So I think Amy talked about, you know, getting that reassurance, and just for me, a big thing is like seeing people that look like me, right? Like, oh man, like so-and-so did this. And hearing, as Pablo mentioned, you know, someone that is a scientist, I didn't catch the name, Pablo, because I was half listening, but you know, people that are doing great things, how cool to see that and be represented. I checked with IR yesterday because I wanted to find out some data, and they told me that 42% of the staff at CSUSB identify Hispanic or Latino, right? So that's good, but only 16% of the faculty, right? So is it that representation is important? In theory, because you know, books say and research shows that representation, but we're not doing that. And Amy, go ahead.
Just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, of how you see other people, and I guess builds confidence. For me as well, I can relate to that because my supervisor as well, she is Chicana as well, and I look up to her a lot, extremely, just because I put myself, as being a Chicana, and she accomplished what I hope to one day accomplish. So I can kind of relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's important. Go ahead, Ed.
You beat me to it. Exactly what I was saying. I mean, I don't remember a single professor that I had while I was in college that was Hispanic. Times have changed. It's not, I didn't graduate just last year. It's been a while, but those made a difference. And luckily I had an older brother that I probably followed, and this goes to maybe alumni and how, if we're not getting it from the faculty, if we're not getting it from the staff, then how do we include alumni or other folks and family members, right? Because this goes to the community. A lot of these students are first generation, but doesn't mean they don't have a cousin or an uncle or someone that they know, or a neighbor down the street that graduated, right? So if they're seeing it in their neighborhoods, in their community, that's also helpful, right? So if we can help increase the number of folks graduating and going back to our communities, then more students or more prospective students will see that, not just on our campus, but in our communities.
Mm-hmm. We've always thought for a lot of years that really we're educating a family. So when somebody gets a degree, it's not just them, their abuela, their grandmothers, and then is getting the degree, because and then your little primos, the little cousins come around, you start talking to them, and before you know it, you're an advocate for the entire family, right? To do it. Very good. Well, how do you think our HSI designation has brought us closer to serving the people of California? I mean, would you say our campus is serving the people of California? Anybody?
A quick response. There's always room for improvement in anything we do, right? If anything, it makes sure that it's something that we have a conversation about, whether the follow through happens or not. It definitely puts us on, are we paying attention to this? Are we looking at this? Are we doing anything about it? And hopefully within those conversations, that good thing comes out of it. But I don't want to, there's so much room for improvement, but I know that I've been hearing it more and more, especially from the CSU system right now with equity gaps and stuff.
Anyone else? Well, here's another question. How do you think our HSI designation, do you think it's actually expanded and enhanced our academic offerings? Or do you think even if we weren't HSI, would we still be doing the same things that we're doing now? Would we just be doing it regardless of HSI status?
And I think about that, Dr. Murillo, and I unfortunately can't answer that, because you're right. Would we be doing what we're doing regardless if we were HSI or not? And I don't know. And that's probably sad to say, right? Because I don't know.
And I had this conversation unofficially with Pablo about geographically, right? Pablo, we talked about how we have prime real estate in San Bernardino and Riverside County. I don't have the numbers in front of me of the county demographic breakdown, but we are serving, I mean, if 66% of our students identify as Hispanic or Latino. I don't know UCR's data, I don't know Cal Baptist data, I just know our data, right? But if we are here geographically located in the Inland Empire, California across the board, right? But I want to go back to, someone said something about, yes, we're graduating them, but are we giving them the tools to go out and work in the community and have that ownership? Because I haven't done enough research on this, but I don't know how many students are taking ownership of getting their degree. And now that you have this degree, it's some kind of not pressure, that's not the right word, but just kind of being like, okay, now I'm the liaison for my primito who wants to go to college unofficially, whether I want to or not. If my neighbor's kid is thinking about college, you're the go-to person because you've already been through it. So I don't think that we, and I don't know if it's how we can fix it, but it's training, encouraging our students that they're bringing social capital with them wherever they go after they leave college. right? It's getting that piece of paper. Yes, you have this paper, you're done with college, but then what? How do we give back to our community? Is volunteering important? Are we updating our resume to everything that we're learning here? Are these transferable skills? Amy, I hope this is going to be in your resume. Being part of a panel is a big deal that we can add to our students, but I don't know how much of that we're doing through the Career Center, through advising, through mentoring, through whatever. As they leave here, what weight and it's heavy weight of being the one that now you have to educate the ones coming after you, and that's a stressful thing to carry as college graduates, especially first generation college students.
Thank you, Avi. I hope you can hear me better now. I've switched my audio. Yay. Okay, we're going to move to the next question, but I also want to preface it and talking about, HSI identity. We shared on social media, for those of you, if you're not following CSUSB _HSI, our Hispanic Serving Institution social media, we are giving away a book today. It's called Becoming Hispanic Serving Institutions, Opportunities for Colleges and Universities. And this is written by one of the leading HSI scholars, Dr. Gina Garcia. And we'd love to give away 2 books today to those of you who are participating. Add your questions or comments in the chat, and we'll randomly select 2 of our attendees today to receive the book. The next question is, as we are thinking of our identity, CSUSB's identity, right? We filed and we were approved to be an HSI based on our enrollment, and that allows us access to this funding. But we're inviting us to think of ourselves beyond just the designation as a campus, but ourselves as an employee, and students and faculty and administrators who, live and work at this institution, that our identity as a Hispanic serving institution, what does that mean? And so if you were to talk to another campus, somebody from another school nationwide or in California, why would you become an HSI? Why is it important? What does that designation do? Or what does the identity of the institution mean when people start thinking of themselves as an HSI? So I'm going to lead it and ask Ed to lead us in this question.
And Dr. Murillo touched on this a little too, in terms of, the funding, right? There's grants available when you're an HSI school. I know we have one on our campus, the STEM grant, that we've had for a good 6 years now, and we're looking to reapply. And part of that, and it goes to the previous question, I went to a conference once and it talked about how a lot of our Hispanic students have these high aspirations. I want to be a lawyer, but then they'll settle for, I'll be okay with as a paralegal study, or I want to be a doctor, but I'm okay if I'm a PA, or I want to do this. And they kind of, I don't know if it's through lack of support in college or lack of communicating with someone, that they're okay with just settling to, not that those positions are bad, not that a paralegal or PA is bad, but if they had these high aspirations, why don't they keep pursuing that? And for example, the STEM grant is to try to keep those students in those STEM fields and not change their major, because we always had a high change of majors of students who started off with STEM and biology or math or so forth, and then maybe they move on to something else because maybe they think it's too difficult for them, or they don't find that they have that extra support to do it. So part of that is with HSI, there's more funding available, obviously, to try to support some of these initiatives. Like I mentioned earlier, kind of highlights to administrators, administration, that we need to make sure we're always trying to pay attention to these kind of things. As an administrator myself, when I'm trying to find funding for certain projects or things that we want to do, these kind of words, HSI, and this will support HSI, also support those efforts. So there's always benefits in the funding, but more importantly, it's so we can make sure we're focusing on our students, because that's what we're here to do, right? To serve our students.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this?
I think we can agree that the demographics of this country, of the state, are changing, right? And so it's only beneficial to keep our graduation numbers up and have more people graduating with college degrees. So we want to become an HSI, and I know I just got the book yesterday, but also I haven't gone into the research of what actually done. But I think that this place, this institution, this system of higher ed wasn't created for people like me, right? It was started for white men, right? And so it's evolving. So if we're evolving that system that has been created and we're changing, like let it change with the population, how the population is changing. I mean, the fact that we have ethnic studies as a requirement for graduation, like that's saying a lot, you know, from years ago to now. So I think that if someone is trying to become an HSI, just thinking about how we're serving our population as a whole across the board, for our students to be successful.
No one else? Okay. Okay, well, this was brought up a few times. And I like the comment, I think it was Valentina Felix, who said, we should be auditing our practices on our campus, which is a form of institutional research. So besides that idea of auditing our practices and policies, what can we do? And this is for Professor Gomez or Dr. Rodriguez, if you want to say it, or even Valentina, since you brought up the thing about auditing, and we invite other people to chime in. What should we be doing to better integrate teaching and research so it focuses on our experiences as a community, because we are a legitimate field of inquiry? And this is open to anybody. I don't know if, Valentina, you tell us about your idea about the auditing, about doing an audit.
Well, I just recently volunteered to co-chair with Alfredo from ASI, the Division for GSA Equity Policy Committee, and I'm scared. I want to do a good job. I want to see change in our students. There's some policies and practices that are, I would say, low-hanging fruit that we can really look at, address, such as like our foster youth. Once they graduate from high school, they don't have a place to live until they start their freshman year, and they're not allowed to live on campus. Where are they supposed to go? You know, we should be providing them a place to transition from their foster home to college, right? So I see there's places that we can address that improve equity and access for our students, but I'm not a policy junkie. I haven't been on policy committees before, but I'm passionate about our students, and plan to learn as much as possible and work hard with Alfredo and the people on our committee. But yeah, I want to affect change, and I've seen that done at the policy level. So I'm excited moving forward, but I'll probably be reaching out to many of you here so I could learn more about your offices and where you see there could be improvements. That's all.
Real quick, I want to address a question you asked about how to better integrate. And I'm not a professor, I'm not in the classroom, so I don't know. But I remember when I was in college, I had a friend who was a psychology major, and he was out doing research, healthcare research in the Latino community. And he was talking to people about healthcare access and things like that, and how it impacted him for his future career and what he does now. So I think that if we are able to engage our students, and again, Paula, not picking on you, but we've had a conversation about research and how our students don't, for the most part, it could be San Bernardino, it could be different, but at PDC, they're just not like embracing the research part of it. And it's a big benefit. Like, if we're thinking of talking to students, to encourage them to do research on any topic. I know that currently we have our math professor is working with the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Palm Desert, where these math students are going to be getting data and research and talking to our Osher committee, which Osher is our older population of 65 and older. They're learning about asking questions and research and how it affects their community. Yes, it's a community of our older population here in the Coachella Valley, but we can add those things to our curriculum in the classroom of here is why it's important to do research and how it applies to you, as opposed to just learning it from a book and some other place of where they can see research besides doing research locally.
I know in my classes, in the education, I would do a thing called community asset mapping. And the idea is that there's funds of knowledge in our community and there's assets in our community. And there's nothing to keep us as a university to study the communities in which we're located and situated, right? Perhaps some professors or some people are doing that, but it doesn't reach me. It's not on my radar, so I really don't know what takes place. But there's a tenet from the Plan de Santa Barbara, and I see we have Cesar Caballero. I don't know if Cesar, if you want to chime in, the dean of our library, but in 1970, as Chicanos, there was a congregation and a plan was created, Plan de Santa Barbara, and where we are supposed to create a bridge between the barrio and the university. And we expect the barrio to come to us, but sometimes we, as the university, we got to go to the barrio, you know? So I don't know if Dean Caballero, if you want to talk about the Plan de Santa Barbara or anything about linking up the barrio and the university.
Thank you, Enrique. Yeah, I'd be happy to chime in a little bit about what the Plan of Santa Barbara, not having reviewed it recently, and I don't have it in front of me, but one of the things I remember from it, besides the plan to establish Chicano studies programs at all public serving institutions throughout California and throughout the US, it called for academicians to go to the barrios and become servants of the people instead of the people serving the academics. So, and we called it praxis, which means practice what you preach. It basically means practice what you preach and serve the people of the barrio. And so a lot of us took it to heart. And so I'm happy to report that most Chicano academics serve the barrios by serving in 501c3 corporations that serve the barrio in different capacities. And so, and then that we take at heart the whole concept of promoting Chicano studies in different forms and developments and throughout campuses. So yeah, the Plan de Santa Barbara is alive and well, and it would behoove us to maybe take a look at it and review it and see how it applies today, because it applies today in a lot of ways. One other thing that I would like to mention is that one of the things that that's brought up in the Plan de Santa Barbara with regards to Chicano studies is not so much the establishment that it is about establishing Chicano studies on campuses, but it also calls for making university curricula, plural, relevant, because as Dr. Murillo mentioned earlier, a lot of the early higher education was totally irrelevant to the needs of Chicanos, Mexican American, Latinos in the barrios. So even to today, I would suggest that we have to be extremely vigilant in promoting a relevant curriculum at our universities. Why? Well, it's obvious. It may be obvious, and it may not be. For example, I think there's plenty of literature that talks about the fact that if a curriculum at a university is relevant, in other words, that students can see themselves in it and can resolve some of the issues and address some of the issues that they have in mind, there's relevancy, that they're much likely to engage, and students are more likely to graduate, and then more likely to become leaders and go on to the communities and create change. So that's why we need to create and continue to create relevant curricula. But anyway, thank you for allowing me to chime in.
And real quick, Marisol's comment about having a mentorship program made up of staff and faculty on campus. I love that idea. In my undergrad, I was at Cal State San Marcos, and I was part of the faculty mentoring program, and I was paired up with a sociology professor. And she was able to talk to me. I didn't know that I had to buy my college graduation regalia. And she told me. It was my junior, I think beginning of my senior year, and having those, talking about grad school, like her trajectory of education was so important to me that I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was graduating from college. And when she was talking about being a sociology professor, I'm like, I can do that. Like, that sounds like fun. But never had I thought that that could have been an option for me, right? Because growing up, my dad's big thing was, you need to get a job where there's AC and a chair. You don't gotta be outside working, right? So that was the goal. So whenever, I was like, oh, sociology instructor, she's inside, she's in the classroom, she's teaching, I can do that. So I think having those types of mentoring programs and with staff, of course, like, we underestimate how much our students hear us and how much our students need to hear our stories. If I get Aurora and Dr. Medina, if I talk too much, please check me. I have stories of students who I met with. Like, I don't usually talk about where I was born, not because I'm embarrassed, but it's not a thing that is very like salient to me. But I had a student who was gonna be talking. I asked her to speak on behalf of the dreamer because I knew she was a dreamer, and we were talking about, hey, can you talk to? I forgot what it was about, but she was like, oh, I don't really like talking about that. And I was like, oh, it's fine. If you don't want to, that's fine. So the conversation evolved, and I told her that I was born in Mexico and that I came when I was 4, and my struggle with learning English. And she opened up and she's like, wow, like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that about you, Abby, that you were not born here. And it wasn't a thing that brought me shame, or I cared about sharing or didn't want to share with her. But I think that our students gain value in hearing those things. And if we're able to mentor them and say, hey, here's where I came from. I didn't know the difference between share and chair, because I struggled in kindergarten learning those two things about why is a share a seat, right? And I'm doing it. A chair with a silla was also sharing is compartir, right? So for me, it was that struggle of learning the language, but sharing that with the student, she was like, oh, wow, like that was your thing too. And being able to share those things with our students, that we have some kind of shared lived experience. And Amy, go ahead.
Just to piggyback off what you're saying, I also, from the student's point of view, I also, I tend to hold faculty or staff or a supervisor at a higher level, and it's just kind of hard for me to connect at a more personal level until they do share information like that of where they're from, how they grew up, things like that. So I definitely do think that hearing that from a higher up, if it's a faculty or staff member, a supervisor, I think it does really help, and it changes the point of view for a student, and it helps them be more comfortable. It helps me be more comfortable and understand, like, oh, we're not too different. We came from the same place and things like that. And I do think like a mentoring program with faculty and staff is amazing.
Thank you so much, Amy. I think hearing that from the student, right? We all need to hear that every once in a while, that yes, it is so important for us to be willing to talk about ourselves and share about our personal identities. And I think as being part of the Hispanic Heritage Month planning team this year with Viviana, and our theme of embracing our identity, our raíces, our roots, I think it really lends to this conversation. And so we have one more question that kind of goes into this, and I do want to share a little bit of background information as an alumni as well. And somebody who's part of our faculty staff alumni chair on campus. The question is, how can we get more Latino, Latina, Latinx alumni involved and show them how they can contribute to campus efforts by donating time and money and benefit the HSI diversity programs that can mean the difference between a historically marginalized student attending CSUSB or not. And I know homecoming is around the corner next month for our campus, and alumni are doing a lot of events. And just a plug before I turn it over to our panelists to answer the question, we do have the Coyote Connection Network on our My Coyote platform. So if you are an alumni, please sign up on the platform so you can mentor a student. Students are being encouraged to log into the platform and be able to connect with alumni. And I know Dr. Rodriguez explained that she's not a professor, but she does teach our USTD 1000 sections. And, you know, this summer we did have our incoming freshmen as a class assignment log onto the platform, and their assignment was to connect with an alumni. And they had a lot of different reasons for them to connect. Thank you for putting up the link to that. I think that's really meaningful, is connecting our current students, our incoming students with alumni and people who've had that experience. So does anybody want to speak to that or their experiences with that, whether at CSUSB or not, from the panel? I'm gonna ask Ed to go because I know he's also on the Latino alumni chapter, and he did put he was interested in answering this question.
No, I appreciate it. I was about to unmute myself as you said that. No, I am a member of the Latino chapter of our alumni association, and some of it goes to the conversation of why do alumni want to participate in something. Usually a lot of times it's because they want to network, right? They want to network for their own professional growth and development in their careers, or just to meet more people. But then there's a vast majority that I see that do what they want to give back. They want to do something that they probably never got themselves. And if I would have got that, then they would have made a difference in my life. Or, man, I wish someone would have told me this sooner. Or what's that saying? What I wish I knew now, what or something like that. I wish I know now what I didn't know. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. But a lot of that, and so a lot of alumni that we talk to, just they want to give back, and it's making those connections. So there is that network that Avi shared the link to. I know even on our campus through ALFSS, there's been attempts in the past to do the Madrino Padrino program, and we did do that for some time, and just making sure we connect that again, because we have a lot of students that have interest in all of this, but the main thing is that connection. I know through our General Alumni Association, they have a Teach for a Day, I think it's called, where they can come in and share their knowledge to certain classes, and I think that's neat. But to put it in a setting where it goes back to feeling comfortable with each other, sharing your own personal thoughts instead of just a discussion, I think that's important to do.
Y'all can talk. I mean, there's someone else I can talk. I've been practicing for a couple of days these questions. I think when it comes to alumni, I think I put in the chat about the mentor program, and then also what we're doing out here in the Coachella Valley, we have the University alumni of the Coachella Valley here, where right now we're just showcasing local alumni that went to school locally in the Valley. They could have gone to school, university elsewhere, they could have stayed here, but we want students to see themselves, right? So if we have a student who went to Desert Mirage High School, right, in Thermal, and then went to UCLA, and is now working in the communities at a nonprofit, like how great, one, to connect as a network, but also like, hey, if you're looking for a job, we have students that are graduating from college right now at PDC at CSUSB who want to go work in nonprofits, and what a great place to connect them. But I think that we have that a lot of our students and our alumni, and not a lot, my sister's an alumni and she's super detached from anything CSUSB related, except for the book club that they have at the Alumni Association that she really likes doing. But I think that whatever type of engagement comes in and putting back that ownership on students, like some people don't want to network, but like, hey, we're having a mixer, come meet alumni that graduated, and having someone, and this is again, Palm Desert, we're so small. we have had alumni mixers out here in the Coachella Valley for a few years now, and it's always very low turnout because there's no one that the student knows from San Bernardino who's coming to these events, right? Because it's, you want to have someone that you know. We're having an alumni mixer next month, and we've already had 70 people sign up last I checked, because it's people like myself, my coworkers who are pushing it out. I was saying, hey, we come to this event because there's ownership. Oh, at least I'm gonna know Avi. At least I'm gonna know Pablo. At least I'm gonna know Damien. Having those things that we connect the alumni that have gone, and if we're still here working, reaching out to our own networks and having that be where we ask for them to come and then eventually donate some monies to us, because obviously that's what we want, right? It's for us to have some funding for our programming that we need for the alumni associations.
To add to some of what Avi mentioned, and I was talking earlier, I think it's important to plant the seed as their student. So for example, I'm looking at Amy right here, and her involvement now. I can only imagine in a few years when she's an alumni, how much she's gonna want to give back, right? Because I got the support, I want to make sure I support, right? So planting the seed, I know one of the things that we do with the Latino alumni chapter, we have an event, I have a degree, now what? So now we do that as they're graduating. We try to set up workshops for them and networking, how to network, how to, interview, resume. We try to bring keynote speakers from our local community, folks that they can maybe see themselves in positions of, but maybe that's too late, right? Maybe if we plan, and that's what I talked about earlier, that skill set building, how can we prepare them so when they graduate, they are going to be successful moving forward too. But those are some of the activities that we try to do. And I know through ALFS as well, in terms of organization, in terms of scholarships, in terms of connecting folks. So we just have to plant the seed a lot sooner.
Yeah. May I chime in? I agree with Ed and Avicennia and others that have commented on this topic. But I'm reminded that ALFS has been extremely successful at conducting a mentoring project. Ed mentioned the Madrina Padrino program. I and others, some of us veteranos have at least know of at least 2 or 3 mentees that have done extremely well with their schooling, that have gone on to become very successful professionals, and who have even volunteered to come back and help out. I know of at least 2 that would be glad to come back and speak to groups of people and talk about their experiences coming through the Madrina Padrina program and what they've done after graduation. So yeah, there's a lot of good ideas on how we can do that. Cool.
Amy, jump on in there, Amy.
I also think that, yeah, like how it was mentioned, ALFS is a great way as a mentoring program, because from personal experience, again, as a student, joining ALFS has given me such a just a great experience, giving me teaching me new things, being the student representative, help voicing the opinions of the students here at campus, helping them embrace their culture, sticking to their culture, because I know sometimes being in an environment of professionalism, for me, it kind of throws me off of being in touch with being a Chicana, speaking Spanish, Spanglish at home. It just teaches me a new thing, and ALFS just brings that both a professionalism and being a Chicana together, and helps me embrace who I am. And I'm helping students here and embrace that as well. And like how I had said, definitely planting the seed and coming back as an alumni and I hope being involved with campus and helping others stay involved with campus as well.
And Amy, if you don't mind me asking, I know you just gave a great answer, but how do we get more students like you to be involved, right? Like that's the struggle that I have, because I feel bad asking my same students over and over, hey, like I know you did this for me yesterday, but today I need this. So how else do we engage our students and encourage them, and you're finding value in it? How do we say, hey, student in my English class, you should come join this because XYZ. So what advice do you have for us?
I definitely I would suggest having like another student speak to another student, talking in the student language, letting them know the benefits. Like, for example, I have voiced and let other students, other friends know what ALFS is, letting them know they should join. I also let many of my friends know about this panel, letting them know they should join as well. In regards to working on campus, I definitely think that's a way to go. Yeah, peer-to-peer contact, I definitely think that's the way to go. I also, sorry, one more thing to say. I also think it's students definitely communicate a lot through social media. So maybe like for students, since we are usually bombarded a lot with information about school and class, we typically like to stick to a simplified social media post where it just gives us the general information we can go off of, and then that's what would definitely get our attention.
I want to write it down because we're always talking about, like, I always tell her, hey, we need to do like a minute or less video for students of like, here's what we're doing. And I know that I've had my programs that I've had, and I like you, Amy, I don't want to read an Instagram post that I have to read 17 words. No, give me the bullet points. If you want to put more things in the caption, put it in the caption. So if it captures my attention, I will read more in the caption. But I think that that's been my whole thing with social media, and me pushing it with my administration of like, if you want to know what's going on, follow me on Instagram and follow me by the CSUSB PDC page so that we can see what's going on and how to communicate. Literally today we had a free popcorn giveaway here at PDC, put it on Instagram. 3 minutes later, we had all the students leaving the lounge to come get popcorn, right? And it's such a quick response. And I think that the simpler, the better. So anyone that's in this chat, in this video, or watches it later, a student is telling you simple. And Amy, tell me yes or no in emails, bullet points, right? We don't need to write paragraphs.
Yes, correct. Correct.
Heard it here first. Thanks, Amy.
No problem.
No, great. And I love the chat, right? Lucy affirms this Zoom. She found out about today's event through social media. And I think that's where it's at, right? Star, thank you. Meeting students where they're at. I think we want to move on to another question from some additional questions that we had kind of planned. And please, for those of you attending, as a reminder, we are giving away this book, Becoming Hispanic Serving Institutions, Opportunities for Colleges and Universities by leading HSI scholar, Dr. Gina Garcia. So engage with us in the chat, ask a question of our panelists, or just make some comments. We would really appreciate that. We'll randomly select 2 winners after today's presentation. The next question, I'd like to invite anybody on the panelists to share. How can we require, that's a keyword, or take it or leave it, recommend, highly encourage ongoing professional learning for students, faculty, and staff on Chicana, Chicano, and Latino, Latina, Latinx issues and the institution's identity as an HSI? Anybody want to take that on first? I mean, what works for you all? What has helped you stay engaged and learning? And I'm going to go with Ed. I think he's ready to answer.
No, that question just makes me think of, and I'm sure all of you guys have seen it just all throughout California and in the media, where now that we're requiring an ethnic studies course, there's a lot of, there's 2 sides to it, right? There's folks that love that, that we're doing that in California, but there's a lot of people that don't like that. And I mean, that just tells you how much there's still divide, right? So, I mean, the word require, I think is sensitive because of certain things right now. But there needs to be a channel to have that continual learning. And to go back, it connects to everything, right? If we understand the why behind it, or why we should do this, or how it not only benefits me, but my community, I think more folks will be able to, will actually join and do it voluntarily because it's important to all of us.
Yeah, I feel a little uncomfortable with required, to be honest, because I think that that is equally likely to produce pro forma, just to comply type of attitudes, if not, you know, resentment. So as somebody said, who was it? Jose said the need to change. Yeah, I think I don't know. I think that, for example, attitudes towards other types of people have changed more because society has changed than because CSUSB makes us watch that funny little scenarios that they have in the training, like, you know. So yeah, I think that people will learn more about this when they feel that they have to, as opposed to when they're forced.
To me, I kind of think of like, I mean, we have to take mandatory things around like gender bias and sexual harassment. We have to take certain things that are mandatory around health and safety. You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate that that for there is a group of our population that not unless it's mandatory, they could care less, but they're serving our community, right? So think about the employees of the university. We're public servants, right? And so we're supposed to be serving our community, the communities we serve, and there's a certain population that hates us. You know what I mean? I remember when I was commissioner for 4 years, I served as the commissioner for financial aid, and I was up there in Sacramento. And when we got AB 131 passed, and now we allow dreamers to apply for state monies for tuition. And a lot of the staff up there were against it. Oh no, these illegals, these whatever, they were just like they hate us. And so, okay, real simple, you're fired. You don't want to serve the people that you're paid to serve, then you're fired. That's real simple. And so our institution benefits from being an HSI designation. And these are the students, whether you like it or not, these are the students we have in your classroom. And so the professors, and not just the staff, but the professors got to catch up with the times. I mean, you hear these horror stories from students about how terrible the professors are treating them in the classroom. They don't see themselves they're using the curriculum from 1973, and they don't integrate technology, and they could care less. And so they view our community as, leave your baggage at the door, leave your stuff at the door. When you come in, you're somehow race neutral, gender neutral, class neutral, which is not true. We're not neutral. I mean, our community our students are our students. And so in a lot of ways, we have to, in a sense, force, our university to truly serve our community, you know?
And
Thank you. Oh, I just want to jump in really quickly, and I just want to acknowledge Amy as our student representative and tell her thank you so much. She actually is going to be logging off in a moment to head to class at 1 p.m. And so I just wanted to make sure everyone knew and that it wasn't awkward when she logs off. But I just want to give her a special thanks for her continued support. And she has done an amazing job in her first semester as our ALFS student representative. And she is just a wonderful student, as you've all heard her today. So thank you so much, Amy. Feel free to log off when you need to leave to class.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
I wanted to chime in, if I may, about the last comments, which is a really excellent discussion, by the way, of why we still need Chicano studies, ethnic studies, not only in universities, but in high schools. I'm a pretty old dude. I can tell you that if it weren't for the fact that the society that we live in and that our institutions like our high schools and our universities, our colleges are still so entrenched with racist people who embrace racism, I would agree with Pablo. But the fact remains that racism is still very much pervasive through our society and very much entrenched in our institutions. Our only hope is for the new generations to develop a different way of viewing the world, a more inclusive, a more diverse, equitable and inclusive manner of seeing the world and people around them. That's why I still support the idea of requiring all our kiddos to take a look at the racist history of our country and the world. Let's be fair, because racism exists in Mexico and all over the world. That's our only hope, that we have the new generation embrace a new way of looking at the world that is less racist, that is more equitable, that's more inclusive. Muchas gracias.
I just want to clarify that it's not that I don't think that there's racism. I think what I'm skeptical about, and also it's not that I don't think that, Chicano studies, ethnic studies should be part of the curriculum. Like, I want to live in a world where we don't even need to have a class for that, because that is the history of this country, right? It's a little bit like what the 1619 project does, right? Like, it tells us African American life is the story of this country. It's not separate and apart, right? So I'm totally for that. Like, that's, I think what my skepticism is that gender attitudes, for example, have changed among sexist people because they went through the mandatory training that we take in September, right? Like, I don't know, maybe they have, right? But I'm a little skeptical about it.
I'll just tell you from experience that pretty much almost anything that's ever been that program we've had on campus, we've had to fight for, and it's come out of a lot of people, and not just me, people before me, who had to fight in order to have, whatever, just to, someone mentioned, oh, why can't we do things in Spanish? You know what I mean? If I could show you the dossier of all the death threats I've received since I've gotten here, it's calmed down, but I got a whole dossier of death threats. Because you put things, because we've chosen to do programs that are in Spanish. You know what I mean? You'd be surprised the attitudes that many of us have experienced. And so a lot of the veteranos, to use Cesar's terminology, we're all bloody because we had to fight for all these things. I'm talking about things before our current president. When President Morales came in, the keys to the door got changed, the locks got changed, and it changed a lot of stuff. But before that, literally, I mean, you'd just be surprised. I mean, I could tell you everything from being harassed by the campus police, from our names not showing up in the bulletin. There was a time on campus where the Latino names, our professors' names would not show up in the bulletin because the person who handled that was racist. So they don't want to put Spanish surnames in the bulletin. That's a true story. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I think many of you who are just coming to campus in the last 10 years may not realize, you know.
Thank you, Dr. Moody. I think that's really important to acknowledge and recognize the past and the history. Like Dr. Gomez said, like, it exists, we can't ignore it. And I wish we would come to the place where it was just understood and known and not questioned. And how can that be true? And we don't believe you. And I know many of our minoritized communities, our Black communities, Latino communities, Asian American and Pacific Islander and Native communities all experience those racisms. But I think this has led to a great conversation and a wonderful discussion today. And I thank you all for joining us. And Dr. Viviana Diaz is going to close us out for today's presentation and panel.
I don't think everything has been said. I just wanted to let you know that this is just an important piece of all our month celebrations. So we really welcome everyone. This is a discussion, as we have said at the beginning. It has to keep going, not just today, not this month. Every single time that we have the opportunity, it's a discussion that we need to keep going and having in. And even if you had colleagues that will say comments like, oh, there she comes again with this, oh, there he comes again with this. Well, it's something that we had to keep repeating and have to be working towards our students and future, success. So thank you everyone for coming and being with us. And again, thank you so much for the Pan Desert campus participation. We are so happy. That's the idea. We need to work together. So we need to start integrating everyone as one, as we are as one towards the same goals. So thank you very much. And Aurora, how you're going to do the book raffle?
We are going to randomly select 2 people from our attendance roster today. So as soon as we log off, when you logged into the Zoom meeting today, you registered, add in your name, and we'll do the randomizer number and we'll just select an attendee. So thank you so much, everyone. And I am going to also put in the chat the link to all of the upcoming Hispanic Heritage Month events for the rest of the next 30 days through October 15th. And there are more to come. There will be a closing event on October 15th. And thank you for those of us who were able to join for the kickoff event yesterday on our San Bernardino campus in the Student Union lobby. More to come, virtual, in person. The next event is ALFSS hosting a takeover event of the Coyote Commons in San Bernardino next week. So stop by for lunch anytime between 10:30 and 1:30 and meet us for lunch.
So before we go, everybody open their mics and say bye. I like when everybody can listen their voice. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.